Sound effects in audio drama scripts: the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are four major elements of every radio drama or audio drama: speech, sound effects, music, and silence. This video will focus on sound effects. Now, each of these four elements can be used incorrectly, used too much or too little, or alternatively be used brilliantly and competently. I am guilty of using silence too much, but my sense of dialogue and comedic timing probably elevates my use of speech above the rest. But sound effects and their proper use is a place where I have some difficulty. Now, let's talk about the good of sound effects. What are sound effects good for, and what is a good use of them? Well, the best way to use sound effects is to use them to supply environmental cues in an audio drama, which emphasize or illustrate something in the dialogue. For example, in my audio drama, The Diary of Death, there's a scene where Grim and Mary are drinking non-alcoholic beer on Grim's sofa, and Grim throws away a can of beer after Mary asks if he wants another can. The sound effect of an empty can of beer hitting the floor or garbage can makes the absurd image of the Grim Reaper hanging out with his elderly landlady and drinking non-alcoholic beer with her that more concrete and real, and thus more humorous. In short, sound effects are used correctly when they add to the story, and not when they distract or take away from other things in the story. This is why not every scene which features characters walking around requires the sound of footsteps, but the implication of movement and travel can instead be suggested by tasteful environmental ambience. Now, the bad of sound effects. What are sound effects bad for, and what is a bad use of them? Sound effects are used poorly when there are too many of them. I hesitate to say that you can use too few of them because having too many is more common and a greater nuisance to the listening experience. If you have too many sound effects, then they can drown out or obscure the dialogue of the story, and that is a big mistake. Speech remains the critical number one element of radio drama or audio drama. If you can't understand what the characters are saying to each other, the play is a failure. I therefore caution all novice dramatists and audio producers to have a bias toward fewer sound effects than you might have an impulse to include, and to have a bias toward the clarity and coherency of speech and dialogue. I did promise the ugly of sound effects, and well, here it goes. It is well documented that there are some things which radio drama is not good at communicating, either using sound effects or pretty much any other elements of the medium. One of these things is physical affection between two lovers. To use plain English, the sound effect of two people kissing is really, really gross. I strongly urge all of you not to include scenes in your audio drama of two people kissing, or worse, engage in any other physically intimate acts, or even to write a scene depicting the aftermath of such an act. Aside from the fact that most radio content should be kept far below PG-13, audio drama on the internet is not made better by including explicit auditory depictions of physical love. If nothing else, it is very easy to render such things horribly and difficult to do so tastefully and artfully. Again, let me repeat, the sound effect of two people kissing is really, really gross. Now, before I finish, I just want to say that this does not mean that you can't use audio drama to write a love story. I absolutely do not believe that. But as with any other medium of fiction, if you are going to write a story about two characters in love, either tragically or comedically, you need to understand that there's far more to a love story than sex. But that is another video. That is my fourth video on audio drama. Thank you for listening. I'm Levi Sweeney. Cheerio!